Awesome. Before we get started, I'm just going to mention a few upcoming events. I'm Daniel from Boswell. We have 2 programs next week on June 29th at 7. Angeline Booley of the #1 YA bestseller, Firekeeper's Daughter, will be talking to Margaret Newton, the poet, local Milwaukee poet, who is also the director of the Electa Quinney Center at UWM, who worked with the Anishinaabe language in Firekeeper's Daughter. It's a pretty cool pairing, Tuesday, June 29th at 7 p.m. And then I'm afraid today is the day that I can't pronounce anything. On July 1st, we're having a special daytime event with Lana Bastashik, author of Catch the Rabbit, an Indies Introduced pick that is a favorite of Boswell's Chris Lee. She'll be joining us from Belgrade, believe it or not. It's an amazing book, and that's Thursday, July 1st, and it is a 2 p.m. event because we don't want her to join us 4 a.m. her time. And then just going ahead to our next Thrill Walkie event, S.A. Cosby will be returning to join us for his new book, Razorblade Tears. He'll be in conversation with Carol E. Barrowman on Tuesday, July 20th at 7 p.m. So that is that. All that pales in comparison to tonight's event. It is day 4464 of Boswell Being in Business, and welcome to the Boswell Book Company Virtual Event Series. I'm Daniel Golden, and I'd like to introduce Ashley Weaver, the author of A Peculiar Combination, which I was able to pronounce every other time I mentioned it. The book is the first in a new series featuring Electra McDonald. It's been winning raves. Publishers Weekly wrote a thorny relationship between Ellie and Ramsey, a cast of colorful characters, a brisk pace, and an ironic message about the identity of true patriots in thrall. Readers will look forward to the next mission for the smart, feisty Ellie and her circle, and Library Journal called it an engaging new series that sparkles, infused with witty romantic conflict. This historical mystery with convincing period detail concludes with enticing story threads for future entries. And thank goodness you got a good review in Library Journal, because as a librarian, I don't know how you could live it down. Otherwise, she's the technical services coordinator for the Allen Parish Libraries in Oberlin, Louisiana. And she is also the author of the Amory Ames series, which includes Murder at the Brightwell, which was a finalist for the Edgar Award. We are honored and delighted that tonight she'll be in conversation with Milwaukee's very own Erica Ruth Neubauer, author of Murder at Wedgefield Manor and Murder at the Mina House. She joins us from Wyoming today, where apparently there is no Wi-Fi. So thank goodness that she's very technically savvy. Erica Ruth is a member of Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America. And we are so honored to have both of you here. Thank you for joining us from all different parts of the country.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Daniel. As always, thank you for having us. I'm just gonna jump in. Okay. Ashley, I was such a huge fan of your first series that I was nervous, but I love this new series as well. Can you tell us a little bit, give us a little background on what this one's about?
Thank you. This series is set in it starts in 1940s London, 1940 London, and it follows Electra McDonald, who goes by the nickname Ellie, and she belongs to a family of locksmiths / safecrackers who are really good at what they do. And she and her uncle the book starts out, she and her uncle are involved in a robbery. They're going to sneak into a house and get some things from a safe, but it turns out to be a setup. And she's brought into contact with a military intelligence officer named Major Ramsey, and he tells her that she can either help him retrieve some documents from a safe before they can be handed over to the Nazis, or she can go to jail. And so of course she chooses to help the cause and, not go to jail. And that's kind of where things start out, but lots of craziness involved.
So I love this new character. How did you decide to make her somebody that was on the other side of the law?
Actually, well, I was reading a book, and it was called Agent Zigzag by Ben McIntyre. And have you read it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's about a kind of a petty criminal, and I think he's sometimes safecracker too. They blew up safes, I think, with explosives and stuff. But he was imprisoned in the Channel Islands, and the Nazis said when they occupied the Channel Islands, they said, "We'll let you out to spy for us." And he said, "Okay," and got trained to be a spy, and then parachuted into England and immediately went to the authorities there and told them, "The Nazis want me to spy for them. Do you want me to spy for you?" So. Yeah. But I read that book and I really liked it. I've liked everything I've read by Ben McIntyre, but it was just neat, the whole element of somebody who was outside the law before the war, deciding that they could use those skills that aren't, necessarily a good thing when you're before the war, become an asset during the war. So I thought that was a fun idea. And so that kind of got me thinking, and that's sort of where Ellie started.
Awesome. So is that what drew you to write during the 1940s, or was there something else? Because your other series is set during the 30s, which is a different time period.
Right. I got kind of in like a World War II phase where I started reading all these World War II nonfiction books. And so I read about all different kinds of things. But when I read that book, it kind of clicked that I was like, oh, this is a really fun idea. And there's just so much potential for Ellie and her circle. They know a lot of criminals, not necessarily all safecrackers, but all, different kinds of criminals and with different skill sets that could come in handy. And so I started thinking how fun that would be to sort of incorporate that into a series.
Absolutely. And so was there something that drew you to the 30s when you started your first series?
I think the 30s, my Emory Ames series, I've always been a fan of, I grew up watching a lot of old movies. And so that sort of, I was called the Ginger Rogers Fred Astaire aesthetic, with the men in tuxedos and the women in evening gowns and elegant dancing in nightclubs and all that kind of thing. And then as I kind of grew up and started learning more about the 30s and that kind of interesting interwar period and sort of everything that was happening socially and just a lot of elements that I found really interesting. And so I've always just been kind of drawn to that time period. And then of course the 30s also sort of the golden age of mysteries, a lot of Agatha Christie and that kind of thing that I've always enjoyed reading. And so when I started that series, it just kind of naturally fell into place there. Like it felt like it was supposed to be set then. So it's just kind of a time period that I've always really enjoyed. And I guess with this new one, it's also a time period that I've started learning a lot about and enjoying. So it's kind of, when I really like it, I want to delve into it.
Absolutely. I feel the exact same way. Now I know you do a very crazy writing thing with your writing, your scenes that blows my mind because I could not write like this. Can you explain how you go about, because you're not a plotter, right?
No, not at all. I'm a 100% pantser. And so usually what I do is I'll write about 50,000 words of random scenes that I know I want to include in the story. I mean, I guess you could kind of look at it as like a very large outline, maybe.
Okay.
And then, once I have all these scenes, I kind of rearrange them into the order I want them to go into and then fill in between. And so usually somewhere between, I'll know, like, as I'm writing the scenes, I'll know, for example, like in my Emory Ames series, if there's 5, 6 suspects, she's going to have interactions with each of them. So I know I have to write a scene where she's interacting with each. And then once those are kind of rearranged, I can go in and like plant the clues or, so I sort of in all that, usually I try and figure out what their motives could be. And then hopefully that's when I decide who the killer is going to be, usually about like 2/3 of the way through. But with the Electra series, I didn't decide on the kind of who the sort of spy contact, the real like solution to the story until it was almost finished. I was like, what if I did this? So, but I feel like hopefully if I'm kind of surprised, then maybe the readers will be surprised. But actually,
I subscribe to that, actually.
The first Electra book I wrote for National Novel Writing Month, which is in November, and you're supposed to write a 50,000 word novel in the month of November. So when I was in this World War II phase of reading books, that's when I wrote that first book. And so I had 50,000 words of the story, and then kind of was able to work with it from there.
Nice. Or was it still all out of order?
Well, within that month, I wrote it kind of out of order, and then sort of rearranged as the month was coming to an end.
Fair enough. So I really like the love triangle you have between Electra and Major Ramsey, and then her love interest who comes back from the war because he's damaged. And that's a really different vibe than the Amory Ames series, which that was a whole different type of romance too, because that was a romance between her and her husband, and they're always at odds. So what made you decide to do a love triangle for this series?
I just thought it would kind of play into Ellie's story well, because she's someone, who's sort of a criminal background, or just a working class family, that kind of thing. So she gets thrown into this with Major Ramsey, who's sort of upper class, a career military man, very straight-laced and that kind of thing. So there's obviously that sort of opposites attract kind of dynamic, but then also she has someone who's from her world. Felix is kind of grown up with her cousins, her two male cousins, or they kind of have all known each other for years. And so she's got that kind of connection and that deep friendship with him, and they understand each other. And so I thought it'd be sort of interesting to explore, sort of the two sides of Ellie, and kind of maybe this connection to the world she comes from, but also sort of the things she longs for, and in another world, or another aspect of life. So it's sort of a love triangle, but also kind of fun to kind of explore how she fits into these two different elements.
Awesome. So besides the books that you had sort of delved into, what did you find yourself doing a lot of other research before you started writing, or do you write and then figure out what you need to research afterwards, which is how I do it?
Yeah, I do generally do that too. Like I'll, especially when I did it for National Novel Writing Month, it was just sort of, you had to get the 50,000 words done in 30 days. So, I'd put usually what I'll do is I'll put in brackets, like open the safe. And then, I can go and you can search your document for brackets, and then I can go back and fill in the things that I know I need to research. So the elements that especially needed a lot of research was the sort of safe cracking and how that works and that kind of thing. But yeah, I usually sort of figure out after what all I need to find out to go into it.
Where did you find, so this was the 1940s, so where did you find out? Was it books? Was it online stuff? How did you research how to open, how to crack a safe?
I did a lot of books. There was a lot of online articles. I found quite a few things, and then also a lot of YouTube videos. There's actually a lot of locksmiths and things on YouTube who apparently people will buy safes at auctions, or and inherit a safe that's in a garage and they won't have any way to open it. So locksmiths online will show you how to open different kinds of safes, if you don't have the key or whatever. So I watched a lot of those videos too, just to see. And a lot of those safes are already old. So it's kind of, that even though they're more modern videos, a lot of them, they still use the same techniques they would have used in the 40s. And so it was really interesting to kind of I had to take all these different things I had learned from all these different sources, and then sort of figure out how to retell it in Ellie's voice. But it was fun, and I learned a lot.
I bet. It seemed super true to life. It really read really well.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I could actually do it, but I started out when I wrote the series, I bought a lock picking kit online. Oh. And I said, I'm going to get to be a great lock picker. And when I do book talks, I'm just open locks and impress people. But so far I haven't mastered that skill. So maybe for the next book.
So funny. That's totally something that I would love to do, but it seems it would be so much work and so just a lot of time.
Yeah, I got the kit and I was I'm going to be awesome at this. And then it was sort of it's hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
So I really love Electra's family, her uncle and her cousins. Do you base your characters on people you know? Do you kind of steal characteristics of people, or do you just kind of create them wholesale?
I just sort of create them. well, it's different with the family members. I guess I always say usually I don't base my characters on people because a lot of times they're either murdered or the murderer.
Fair.
But no, these mostly just kind of just created from kind of what I think would work well and sort of who I imagined her family to be and kind of what the family dynamic was and things like that. Like she's been raised by her uncle. She's orphaned at a young age. And so she's been raised by her uncle with 2 male cousins. So that kind of contributed to her sense of being like strong and confident, and she's not easily intimidated. You know, she's had to stand up to the boys all her life. And so that's when, now that the war has come and the women are stepping up to do these jobs, you know, she's ideally prepared for that.
Nice. I recall you saying that you started writing at a pretty young age. Did you not? So when did you know that you wanted to be a novelist?
Well, in like a cheesy sense, when I was in elementary school, I was like, I want to be a writer when I grow up, because the very first story I remember writing was my dad had one of those really old computers with like the green and white striped paper with like the perforations on the edges. And I remember writing this story on that paper, and it was, I think it was kind of a ripoff of the Bobbsey twins, actually. It was like some twins solving a mystery. but I remember thinking how fun it was that I could take a story and like, you know, put it down on paper and people could read it. And so that was the first kind of inkling I had that this is really something fun that you can, you know, put your ideas from your head or, you know, from the Bobbsey twins on paper, and, you know, and you've got a book that people can read. So that was sort of, you know, the early, you know, that was mixed in with, I want to be an archaeologist and I want to be you know, all the other things I wanted to be when I was little. But I wrote my first full-length novel starting my freshman year of high school. And I would write it in the evenings or like on the weekends, and I'd print it out and bring it to school, and my friends would read it like at the lunch table and give me feedback. So that was kind of my first taste of really writing for an audience and like hearing what people had to say. So.
Wow. Have you ever gone back and looked at any of that?
Still have it. I haven't looked at it in a while. That one I wrote was I call it a gangster mystery romance. It was set in Prohibition era Chicago, and I grew up watching, like I said, all those old movies. But like in addition to Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, I liked like Edward G. Robinson and like Humphrey Bogart and James Dean, all the gangster movies. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna write this gangster story. So it was about a woman whose boyfriend was like working for a gangster and got convicted of a murder and sentenced to die in the electric chair. And so she's trying to like prove that he didn't do it before he was executed. And so she had to like get help from his mob boss and stuff. And so it was just sort of, yeah, dramatic and fun.
Right? That sounds amazing. That sounds like something I would totally read.
Yes, maybe someday I'll go back and look at it. It can be kind of fun. I haven't looked, I mean, every once in a while I'll go back and look at old stuff I've written, but I haven't looked at that in a long time. So.
Yeah. So this is weird because when I'm talking about who my influences are when I sat down to write a novel, it was you.
Oh,
so this is full circle for me. It is. I remember exactly where I was. I was with my best friend who was also a librarian, and we were sitting on my back porch, and I was reading Murder at the Brightwell, and I kept putting it down and saying to my best friend, I want to write a book like this. This is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
What? It's true. So this is very full circle for me. But so do you have early influences?
Oh, now I've got to think. As far as just like kind of the tone of like what, especially with the Amory Ames mysteries, is that of course it was like always Agatha Christie. Like I started reading her books pretty young because I worked at a library, and one of my coworkers was like, you should read one of these. And so I was maybe like 15 or something. And so I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And if, you know, no spoilers, but like the ending of that one blew me away. And I was like, what? You know, and so, and I just always enjoyed so much like the interactions between her characters. So she was just sort of, I mean, I guess she's probably kind of like, you know, most people's sort of inspiration is Agatha Christie, but that's kind of how I was, you know, I love that 1930s sort of, I guess like, you know, polite, sophisticated murder.
Yes.
It's a little bit different, but I feel like maybe even more than books, it was those movies, because even, you know, watching those old movies was an inspiration to me for the 30 series, but also for the 40 series, because, you know, watching all those black and white movies from the 30s and 40s sort of gave me a, you know, for the 40s, you've got kind of like the hard-boiled sort of men and the sassy dames and all, you know, all that kind of
Yep.
thing. Yeah, so I think that's been a big kind of the elements that I enjoy in those old movies are elements that I like to kind of bring to my stories, I guess.
And so do you, when you're reading for pleasure, do you read a lot of mysteries yourself?
I do. I read a little bit of everything. So I don't have I actually really like the psychological thrillers.
Oh.
It's like one thing I read a lot when I'm reading mysteries. It's not like the genre I write in, but like I have, of course, a lot of like sort of more cozy mystery authors that I enjoy reading. I love your books.
Oh, thank you.
They're awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So but yeah, just kind of a little bit of everything. And I like over the last few years, I found I've been reading a lot more nonfiction for some reason. So I think I just kind of get in phases of what I enjoy.
And are you able to read while you write? I know some people just cannot read anything while they're in writing mode.
Yes, I can read while I write. I try not to read in my genre usually while I write because I don't want to be like, you know, subconsciously, you know, picking up too much or whatever. But you know, I read different kinds of things while I write usually. But like I'm also sort of a procrastinator. So usually once it hits like full on writing mode, I don't have as much time to read.
Same. So are you reading anything right now that you can recommend?
I just finished an awesome book, John Eyre by Mimi Matthews. Actually comes out, I don't think it's out yet. It comes out in July. And it's a sort of gender swapped, sort of gothic, supernatural retelling of Jane Eyre.
Ooh.
Like John Eyre is the tutor and he's working for Mrs. Rochester, but like there's some sort of supernatural kind of gothic elements happening. It was really good. I really enjoyed it a lot.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I just finished that one. So I can't remember if I was gonna pick what I was gonna pick up next. Usually I've got like a stack and I'm trying to decide what I'm gonna read next. And I you know, working at the library, I hoard books because I do a lot of the cataloging at work. And so when the books, I get to open all the book boxes that come in. And so I usually get first dibs. And so I'm always bringing home big stacks of books.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Have you always wanted to be a librarian? How did you get there? How did you get to Louisiana also?
Yeah. Well, I started working actually at the Greendale Public Library in Wisconsin. So I started working there when I was 14. The same year I started writing that first novel. It was my freshman year of high school, and there was a little after school position open at the library. And so I thought, you know, I come here all the time, I might as well. And so I started doing that. And so I ended up working, worked at libraries ever since. And so once I finished I got an English degree for my undergraduate degree. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna go to library school. So I've kept on working in libraries. I worked in Wisconsin until I moved to Louisiana. And it was about 16 years ago this year, I think. And actually my dad got a job here. And so they relocated. And so I just decided to come with my family down here. So it's been a change of pace, but I've enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, definitely.
I couldn't do the heat.
Yeah, that's the worst part. I used to like it. I don't know, when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, the heat. And now I'm like, oh, I can't wait till winter.
Oh my God. I would just be living in the air conditioning all the time.
Yeah, I always say it's kind of the opposite of living in Wisconsin, is because there in the winter, like you can't go out much because it's too cold.
Right.
But then here in the summer, you can't go out as much because it's so hot. So it's just sort of flipped.
That's fair. So what are you working on? Can you tell us what you're working on right now? I mean, are we going to see any more of Amory Ames, or are we looking just mostly for Electra McDonald in the future?
Well, I just finished the second Electra book, and so it's turned in, and that's the last book on my contract. So I'm just sort of waiting to see kind of what happens next. So I hope probably you know, I hope to kind of continue Electra for a little bit, and then we'll see if Amory makes a reappearance at some point. Thanks. We'll kind of see how it goes.
That's fair. Now, Daniel, I do have bad news for you because I cannot see if there are questions. from the audience.
That's the
I'm
that's
so
the problem with the
sorry.
phone thing. Yes. Well, I'm happy
That's the
to
rub.
jump in. Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of left you in the lurch. I'm like, I'm going now. So,
She said,
bye.
We're both like, where did he go?
I was like, but welcome to both of you. I'm like, I thought that was like welcome. I don't know. Anyway, I can help with the questions. So why don't I?
Thank you.
So from Rhonda, Amory and Ellie both interact with the upper echelon of society. Amory is born to the purple and Ellie is there as an imposter, which makes me wonder if you view one or the other as more noble and heroic.
oh, that's a great question.
That is a really good question.
Rhonda, you are so smart. That's all.
Yes, that's
Rhonda?
such a good question. I don't really think necessarily there's one or the other. I think it depends on the person, really, because I feel like Ellie is not, she's from a working class family and from a family of thieves even, but she, because she's has this patriotic sense of wanting to help her country and defeat the Nazis. And so she uses her skills to, do what she needs to do and step forward and do that. And then also, Amory is from, sort of upper class family, and the people she interacts with are usually, high society, but even within that element, she's able to kind of find people that need help, and she has a desire to help them. So I think it's kind of a matter of just people who are willing to, wherever they're from, step forward and do what needs to be done and help people when they can.
I will follow up to that. Do
Okay.
you find one of those more challenging to write than the other? Writing from one, like top down up,
I don't know. I feel like I sort of fell into both kind of naturally, I think. They're sort of very different people, so it's kind of easy for me to sort of imagine how they interact in the worlds they come from. Now, of course, there's some things that require, research, and, even like with Amory, like, where people would sit like during a dinner party, or like, sort of, the society things that you don't really think about. And then with Electra, the kind of criminal element, something I don't have a lot of experience with, but, sort of imagining, this kind of world she lives in. And so it's just kind of, both of them require a little bit of imagination and a little bit of research. So I'm not from either world myself.
I will get to another one. I just wanted to say one of the things I really liked about the book is how it was like an espionage, traditional historical mystery hybrid. I kind of like the way the genre,
Yes.
I'm always interested in when people take genres and put them together in different ways.
Thank you. I feel like that kind of too is another thing that sort of maybe stems from my old movie sort of love, is because a lot of times, movies in the 40s, especially when they were being very patriotic and things, would have kind of like a sort of, even like they took the Basil Rathbone, Sherlock Holmes, and set them in the 40s, and they were kind of going up against the Nazis. So it was sort of like, you could work in the spy elements to the mysteries. And so I kind of like kind of mashing them together and taking different elements and working them in.
I'm assuming Abbott and Costello also went up against the Nazis.
They probably did. They went up against Frankenstein and the Wolfman and all that. So I'm sure.
Let's see. Well, somebody was very excited about you, really hopes that if you ever tour, that you bring the lock picking kit. And I'm just saying, if you stop by Milwaukee, I'm sure that Erica Ruth will be able to. She's done everything else. So I know she'll be able to pick locks.
I have not done it in many years, I think, out there.
Oh, okay, we're going there. We might have to go there in another.
An enigmatic statement. I like it. Okay, yeah, I'll practice. Once I start doing in-person events, I'm gonna try and be ready with my lock picking kit.
So
You just get that on Amazon?
Yes.
You can get anything on Amazon.
Yeah.
Judith wrote, she has two things. First, she's very interested in your pantsing approach to mystery writing. Wowzers, I was wondering what your outline looked like, and there wasn't one. And then later on, she wrote, curious that you invented these characters from scratch. They are very round for all that. So,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. I've always just found like writing, I mean, I guess maybe that's how I avoid writer's block, is writing, like when I get tired of writing one scene, I just write a different scene. And so kind of, as I write too, I sort of kind of try to think about like, I don't know, maybe it's sort of like a mental outline. I kind of have an idea in my head of like, I know what all needs to happen for the book to be finished, and then sort of what elements I need to include, and kind of as I'm writing, I think, okay, now I need, she hasn't talked to this person in a while, so now we need to do this, or, kind of, so it's sort of just I don't know, it works for me.
Erica, with you also, you don't know who your murderer is sometimes, right? No.
No, I was writing today and I was like, who's coming down these stairs? I don't know,
I love
but
it.
it's somebody.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like when you do that, it keeps you interested. You're like, I don't even know what's going to happen.
It's people are surprised by how many mystery writers don't, do pants writing, as opposed to planning. I would say I haven't heard too many people who write quite as out of order as you do. So yeah, that's uncommon. It's a skill you could workshop.
Maybe so. I will say it maybe isn't the most practical approach. Like sometimes I do end up with scenes I don't use, or things like that. So it's not necessarily as streamlined maybe as if I had an outline. There wouldn't be quite so much left over, but I always save whatever I don't use, and so I have taken stuff that I cut from one book and put it in another. Ooh. So sometimes it can be used.
People cut stuff. People have to cut stuff even when they write in order, and even when they
yeah,
it's just part of writing life.
I always keep a document. It'll be like the one I just wrote is always on my computer as like LE2, the second book, and so then I'll have like LE2 scraps. And so anything that I cut goes in the scraps document. And so then I have it all together there. Sorry, my dogs are excited.
Rhonda was also excited by the idea of polite, sophisticated murders, but you have to kill people with your pinky up.
Yes.
And here's one. Ashley, this is from Judith. I'm curious about your use of first person. It gives a neat angle into a fairly elaborate plot. Wondering about your choice to use it, and do you ever think about using a different point of view?
I'm trying to think. When I started writing the Amory series, I just kind of sat down, and that was sort of like, I always say it started with a dream, but I just had a dream with a woman named Amory Ames in it. And I was like, oh, that'd be a good name for a character. So then I sat down and started writing the story. And so I think I just automatically started writing that one in first person, I guess, because I kind of had an idea right away of who I wanted her to be and sort of what her voice was. And then when I decided to do it with Ellie, I like the idea of doing first person because I think it maybe makes her, especially for someone who's a criminal and sort of on the wrong side of the law to begin with, it sort of makes her a little bit more relatable, and you can understand her motivations a little bit more, and sort of the kind of the nuances of her patriotism, but also her sort of background that kind of plays into how she feels about a lot of things. So I think that played into why I wanted to do her voice in first person. And I've written a couple things in third person, but I also like the element of first person because then you don't have to be in so many people's heads, I guess. And so I think that works well for mysteries as well, as because you can kind of, we've just got one perspective to look at, and what is this person's perspective on the mystery. So just sort of, it's, I guess, kind of how I fell into that. But no, I wouldn't be opposed to doing third person someday, so we'll see.
Did you, when you started writing the two different series, did you find yourself having to like make a conscious decision to make the voices different, or did they come really easily to you? Like, were the characters just sort of speaking to you in their own voices?
A little bit of that. There were like a few times when I was writing Ellie, when I'd have to go back and say, oh, that's a little bit too Amory, like the way she would kind of phrase things, because Amory talks a little bit more la-di-da, I guess. But so, kind of, and then, I had to I was trying to look up more like a little bit more slang, a little bit more casual with Ellie's voice. So kind of their personalities sort of made them a little bit easier to, because they're very different people. I mean, they have some of the same kind of, you know, sassy traits, I guess, but they're kind of, you know, manifest themselves in different ways. So I think their voices made it, their personalities made writing in first person a little bit easier for them, but then there were still some elements that I had to consciously, you know, make sure I made them different. A little both.
I have one more question from
Okay.
Rhonda again. Rhonda said, there's something about Felix that makes me uneasy. It feels like he might be up to no good. Was it your intention to make readers suspicious, or am I just looking for trouble? And I just want to say the planting of, you know, there's obviously in Ellie's backstory in terms of her family, you know, her parents, there's obviously, you can't leave us hanging there forever, obviously. You're right. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be going there. So maybe Felix, I hope, or no.
Yes.
Without giving anything away, but.
Yeah, no, I definitely have plans for, because Ellie, I guess I can say Ellie has her own personal mystery in her life. And so that's something that's always kind of hung over her and something that she wants to explore. And so maybe sort of this new avenue of her life, sort of in crime solving and whatever, is kind of giving her a little bit of the what she needs to step forward to kind of work on solving that mystery as well. So yeah, that's something that's kind of gonna unfold in the in other books, hopefully. And then Felix, my sister said the same thing. She's like, Felix is sort of suspicious. So I guess he maybe kind of has that vibe. But also Felix is from Ellie's world, and so he's kind of a little bit of a con man himself. So I think maybe that's kind of one reason why he sort of has that element to him, is because he's someone who's used to hiding what he thinks and his true feelings and that sort of thing too. So he's got a little bit of con man in him, but I think he's pretty good at heart.
So far.
Yeah,
Right,
so
that's
far.
right. I was like,
what
you
I'm
don't
gonna
know. Who are you, the writer?
I don't know what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
Okay, do you have more questions? I don't have any more here, so I'm going to go off until.
Oh, I think one just popped up.
One just popped up.
Did it?
Yeah. But I can't, I only could see part of it.
Oh,
was
there it is.
something
Got
about
it.
the audiobook, I
Oh,
think.
here's Erin's. I can't get enough nonfiction, historical fiction, fiction set in the 1930s and 40s. Do you have other reading recommendations beyond your two series? Because all I had to put in the, in terms of specific books we've been trying to claw out of you, all I was able to put in is John Eyre, and it's 5% at Ingram. I'm like, well, that's no good, but I did.
Oh.
How did you get hold of that John Eyre book? They just sent
Oh, I know Mimi. Oh, I mean, she's a Twitter friend. So,
there you go.
but yes, for other recommendations, actually, I'll give a little plug. Erica Ruth and I both belong to Sleuths in Time, which is a group of historical mystery writers. And so I think, I always forget, is it 8 or 9 of us? And so Sleuths in Time.
Not good at numbers.
I'm sorry?
Not good at numbers.
Yeah, I know. English major. But yes, you know, sort of, they're all kind of writers. They write in different time. We all write in different time periods, most of us, but it's all kind of in the same vein, sort of historical mysteries, kind of on the, you know, cozier side of things, nothing too intense or whatever. But yeah, so if you check us out, Sleuths in Time authors, I think we're most probably active on Facebook, but you can find all the authors there, and we do a lot of kind of fun events and stuff too. So check us out.
I will get that link up right away.
Awesome. And then
I will also, I'll also plug a historical that I really loved that I read recently was Fortune Favors the Dead.
Oh.
I think it's Stephen Spotswood, and it's set in the 1940s. It's a little more hard-boiled. It really had a vibe of Nero Wolfe, but with 2 female protagonists.
Oh.
Yeah, set in New York in the 40s. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, our buyer just bought that this week because and it sounded really interesting. Yeah, I was reading the copy. I'll send the information for people too.
And I saw somebody ask something about the audiobook. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, do
couldn't
you want
see
me
it.
to find it? Here, let me see.
Oh, if you don't, oh, maybe I can find it. I don't know if I can do it on here. Let's see.
There was an audio?
Oh, I see it. There it is.
I can't find it. You read it.
Okay, I enjoyed the audiobook. Is the voice what you pictured for Ellie? I really liked it. That Allison Larkin does a great job. She's the narrator of my audiobooks, and she narrates my Amory Ames series too. And so when they suggested her for this series, I was like, well, will it be confusing to have the same voice for two different characters? But she does a really good kind of like London accent as opposed to Amory's sort of more upper class accent. So her voice is a lot different. And so I listened to some of it and I really like the way she did it. She's really good. But yeah, that was fun because I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you can listen to someone reading your audiobook. I can't
I know,
do it.
I've always cringed at it. But I can't remember why. I was like, let me listen to a little bit of this because I hadn't, like since the books came out, never opened them, again, because I don't like to do any of that. But I have listened to some of her, like, pieces of her reading, and she does a really good job. And she does like great accents and good different voices for the characters and stuff. So she's great. I kind of want to go like listen to her read. I think she does all the Jane Austen books. And so I want to go listen to her read those. Because yeah, she's really good.
Do you have any input into your covers at all? Now I'm just curious.
Well, not too much. Like usually they send me sort of like a sketch or something ahead of time, or which I've loved all my covers. I've been so fortunate. Like they've done a really, really awesome job. And so they sent me the new cover for this book and I absolutely loved it. The only thing we ended up changing was she was blonde on the cover. And so I was like, oh, but she has black hair in the story. And so they changed that. But I mean, they've always done a fantastic job on the covers. Every time I open the emails, I'm so excited. And I was like, I gasp usually when they send it to me.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky.
I do have another question. Has anyone given you any writing advice that you found super helpful that you could pass on?
Well, I mean, it's sort of probably like one that everyone's heard, but like for me, when I always think about this question is like one of the best pieces of writing advice I ever heard is Stephen King said, to be a writer, you have to read a lot and write a lot. And I always think like that sort of sums it up in a nutshell, at least what's worked for me, because I've read, even everything you read, I feel like helps hone your writing skills because you learn like what you like, what you don't like, how, what you think works, what doesn't. So I feel like reading is very useful. And then writing a lot. I write a lot of stuff even that I maybe will never even publish. Like if I get an idea, I have an ideas document on my computer. I think it's 80,000 words now. And I'll just go write like either, a couple paragraphs of an idea or like a little bit of dialogue or like even a couple pages of a story. And if I get it inspired by it, I write it down because even if it never sees the light of day, I feel like everything I write kind of contributes towards helping me become a better writer, hopefully.
And do you write every day?
No. I write like in the 2 months before my book is due. No, I do sometimes. I do. Sometimes like okay, like now my book. I just turned in a book like in April, so I won't have. Hopefully, if I get another contract, the book won't be due till next April. And so a lot of times, what I'll do is like I'll take a month, like August or whatever, and then try and write 1,000 words a day in that month. Okay. And so then I have like 30,000 words, to work with, or like these books I did for NaNoWriMo, so I had 50,000 words, kind of a big chunk of it. And then that's what I used to work with it, before it is time to turn it in. But no, I'm not a write every day sort of person. You don't either?
I'm not either.
No, sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like it today.
No, I feel like if I'm drafting, like then I'm writing every day. But if I'm not, then I'm not.
And I feel like I mean, I guess it works differently for every writer, but to me, like writing every day makes it feel more like work.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that I'm like excited to do. And I mean, there's always an element of work involved when you're trying to make, Yeah. But yeah. It's less, I don't know, it feels less like you know, something tedious when you're not making yourself do it if you don't feel like doing it every day.
Have you ever thought about writing anything in a different genre?
I always say when people ask me that like I've tried to write other genres, but somebody always gets murdered. So you're writing like a nice little whatever, and then
Right.
oh, there goes somebody's dead. But yeah, I thought about it. So we'll see what happens. Kind of, you know, there's a lot of things I've played around with, or just different ideas I've had and things like that. So we'll see what happens in the future. But I always enjoy reading mysteries, and I like writing them because it keeps me on my toes, and like there's so many different elements you have to juggle, and sort of the element of surprise and that kind of thing. So that's what I like about writing mysteries.
Same.
Do you ever think about writing something different, or mostly?
You know, I have thought about it. Not enough to actually sit down and try.
Yeah.
I would love to try to write actually like a ghost kind of story mystery, like
yeah.
Simone St. James. I think
Uh-huh.
she does an amazing job. So maybe something like that. And I'm actually right now I'm researching to try to write a nonfiction book. So
Cool.
I'd
That's
give
awesome.
it that a whirl.
Yeah, I do think that would be really interesting. I always like especially like true crime. I think would be so fun to write a true crime.
That's kind of what I'm doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
exciting. I'll be excited
Yeah.
to hear more about it. Very cool.
Daniel, did you go away again?
I'm always back. I was just interesting that you were talking about kind of this ghost story mixed with mystery. Did either of you read Ghost Talkers by Mary Robinette Kowal?
No.
She won, like,
No.
she's done this Lady Astronaut series that's won like every science fiction award known to humanity. But before that, she wrote this series that was was like a Jane Austen fantasy series. And then in the middle, she wrote this one-off, and it's about the spiritualists in World War I in 1920 with the
What'd you say it was called?
it's called Ghost Talkers. It's so good because
Yeah.
it seems it's set up like a fantasy, but it's really a mystery. And so
That sounds good.
so what the premise is that when Houdini and the other medium spotter, like when they were trying to out all the false spiritualists, they were actually doing it for the war effort because they actually were really spiritualists around, but they didn't want the Germans to get a hold of this magic.
That sounds good.
So they run these mediums, they train them in this camp to bring back dead soldiers who can be spies. That's the setup of the book. And
that
of
sounds
course, somebody's murdered.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
really
gonna have to
good.
read that. I really like that. That's like why I really enjoyed that John Eyre book too, is because it kind of had that little bit of supernatural bent to it. I don't want to give too much away, but it's I like when there's a little element of spooky in my my stories. That's fun.
Yeah, it's not a mystery, but something that just came out from another Milwaukeean is a book called The Chosen and the Beautiful. And it is a take on The Great Gatsby. And
cool.
because you know, when it's public domain, so you can all do Great Gatsby mysteries now. And
no,
because you wanted to.
I think it's a mystery.
It's through the eyes of Jordan Baker, the minor character. But in this book, she's pretty much who she is. She's an amateur golf, athlete and stuff like that. But she's adopted Vietnamese orphan. And she also plays with, has knowledge of this sort of paper magic. So she follows the plot line, but there's all these exacerbations of class conflict that are sort of veiled in the new money versus old money of Gatsby, but become much more, it's also the beginning of the immigration laws. And so, and demons actually roam the earth, and people drink demon cocktails, so that plays into prohibition. It's good. But I know, and people, surely someone dies, but it's not a mystery.
Surely.
Surely. Daniel, did you put up, I think I think I saw you put up The Right Sort of Man by Alison Montclair.
Yeah, that was recommended by one of our attendees.
I loved that series. That is a really good recommendation. I also would recommend Diane Freeman's series, the Countess Harley series. And I think the first one is called A Lady's Guide to Murder and...
Oh, yes. Murder and Mischief.
I think it's Murder and Mischief.
Okay.
All right, I'll
Those are
find that
really
too.
cute. They're really fun. I really recommend those.
First one I think is Ladies Guide to Etiquette and Murder.
Okay.
Okay.
Might be the first one. So I'll get that linked in here. And then maybe I'll send a link for the new one too.
Because I just read the new one of that, and that's a good series.
I think I just got that one in the mail actually, but I haven't read it yet. Got a kind of a big stack.
I know. I brought a giant stack with me here to Wyoming, thinking like, oh, I'm going to do all this reading.
No, I know. Usually when I plan to get the most reading done is when I don't.
Exactly.
And then if you don't think you're going to have time to read, then you like read through whatever you have with you and wish you hadn't brought more. So
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. Yeah, Etiquette and Murder. And I want to say this might be a Mischief one, but I can't remember.
There is a Mischief one somewhere. The Fiance's Guide to First Wives and Murder is the one that's coming out.
Okay.
Oh,
Shortly.
I didn't get the link right. Let me try that again. Is it actually in the same, is that maybe a different series?
It might be a different series that I'm thinking of.
No, it's
Is it?
those are all the same series. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, they stopped calling it Ladies. That's what confused
They
me.
did. And there was a big kerfuffle, and they trying to figure out whether or not that was the right move.
Oh.
They're
Yeah.
also no longer, like they were coding it with a number and they took the number off, but it is number 4.
Okay.
It is number 4 in the series. So, well, that's exciting.
Right?
Yeah, this is fun. I've written down several of these recommendations. So I'm excited to go. I got some good stuff. What are you working on right now? Are you? Oh, you said you. Oh, I think you said that before we started. But you are working on your next.
I'm not under contract yet, so I'm just sort of hoping for the best. And so I did start number 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm at now too. So.
Yeah, this one is set in Istanbul, so that's fun.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And then I have an idea for the 5th, so they should really give me another contract.
Yeah.
And then the fifth I want to set in on an island in Scotland. So.
Oh yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Ready to read it already.
We will have this recorded, and I will send this to your editor so that they know that they have to buy it.
This will be the selling point.
Yes.
We're all every one of us here is very excited about number 4.
Yes.
Question. There's a question, Danielle.
Oh,
I think it's do you travel?
Question, Coach. Do you travel to locations you write about?
You want to go first?
Yes. So like for the first one, for all of them, the Egypt book, the second one I'd been to England many times, but the third one is set on a transatlantic cruise, and then the fourth one is in Istanbul. And so all of them, I wrote them first, did a lot of research, looked at a lot of videos on YouTube, looked up a lot of old pictures, wrote it first, and then traveled to the city or traveled to the place. And then kind of checked my work to make sure that I'd kind of got the feel of it.
Yeah.
Correct. How about you?
I when I started writing the Amber Ames series, I'd never been to England. And so that was sort of, like you said, a lot of reading and research and pictures and that kind of thing. And then I think the fourth book takes place in Paris, and I had been to Paris. And so, that kind of helps a little bit. And then I'm trying to remember where else they've been. They've been to New York, which I've been to, but a lot of times I kind of feel like the aside from sort of getting, I guess, the vibe of the city, and like, you know, New York and London and Paris are not going to be exactly the same as they were then. I feel like your locations, you're going to be able to kind of get more of a, you know, Egypt and Istanbul and that sort of thing is kind of got this maybe in some ways still the same, you know, as it might have been when you're writing. So, but yeah, I do enjoy. I think in the second book I wrote, they had tea at the Ritz or something like that. And so when I finally got to go to England, I went and had tea at the Ritz, and I was like, oh, this is so fun because this is something they did. But yeah, I do
New
love
York's very tough. So
yeah.
Everything's. We had a author who did a Gilded Age book, and someone asked if they could, Renee Rosen, and someone asked if they could tour like Gilded Age New York, and she said you can go to Trinity Church, and that's pretty much it. You know, like if you want to see how the Gilded Age live, you have to go to Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So much stuff, so much change, and that's a fast moving city. But yeah, I did. I got to go to Ireland a couple of years ago, and I'm hoping someday some of my characters can go to Ireland, but we'll see what happens.
So we had a question about what your 9-to-5 job is, and we mentioned that I think you're a branch manager?
No, I'm the technical services coordinator. I'm on the admin team at my library, and so we're pretty small. The you know, parish we live in is like 25,000, and so we have 3 branches in a bookmobile, and so it's pretty small. And so kind of my technical services, I'm sort of over like cataloging and sometimes I order books and that kind of thing, but also kind of a jack of all trades at the library. I do, you know, get involved in the programming and all that kind of thing. So since we're small, we're kind of all over the place, but it's a lot of fun, and I get kind of have my fingers in all the pies and doing a little bit of everything. So I really enjoy it.
We have a last question, Erica.
Me?
Yeah. You want to have a close it all.
Bring it all together.
Yeah, taking it home. I've run out of ways to say it.
I think I used up all my good stuff.
All the good ones.
Yeah, you had a lot of good ones already.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're looking forward to your whatever comes next, whether it's the next book.
That one's done. Yes.
Okay. So, and maybe you'll write a true crime book and a ghost story.
Maybe.
And maybe the world needs like a romantic comedy where someone's murdered in the middle.
Then it's never mentioned again, just like, oh, and then you carry on with your romantic comedy. Just life.
I didn't like them anyway.
That has nothing to do with me. So just carry on. Let the police handle it.
Right?
Like none of our characters ever do.
Ever.
Wow, that policeman is really hot. So,
and super competent.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you know?
I didn't like him at first, but now I do. 100 pages later. Thank you both so much for a wonderful evening. Like I said, we'll have recording up. We have a link to purchase both your books. If folks, if you're attending and you click on the link, the page will still be there when the event is gone. So thank you both for joining us, and thanks everyone who watched the event. We wouldn't have a virtual bookstore without you. Hope to see you at another event or in the store.
Thank you.
Thanks.